Right, let's try and get more details now about that SANDF flight engineer who was killed on duty in the Democratic Republic of Congo yesterday. The Oryx helicopter he was aboard came under fire in Kichanga. The pilot was injured as well. He, however, managed to fly the chopper to Goma. He's receiving treatment in hospital. The SANDF has had troops in the region as part of a United Nations peacekeeping force, assisting government forces for years now as they try to push back M23 rebels in the east of the country. Let's speak to Pikkie Greeff from Defence Union SANDU. Good evening, Advocate Greeff, and talk to us a little bit about this incident. What actually happened? Where were they? What were they doing at the time?
Well, the members, good evening. The members were on a mission with the Oryx helicopter from a city to the north of Goma, where they are based. And they were returning to Goma when the helicopter got fire from the ground and was hit on the right front part. And the flight engineer was wounded in the chest and the pilot in the shoulder. And apparently it's small arms fire that hit the helicopter. The pilot, as you mentioned, managed, or the co-pilot managed to land the chopper safely in Goma. And the two members were then med-evacuated to a level 3 hospital. But unfortunately, on their way to this, during this medical evacuation, the flight engineer succumbed to his wounds.
All right, so we understand that his next of kin is still being contacted, so we cannot release the sergeant's name. But could you tell us how the co-pilot is doing? We've heard he's in a critical condition. Do you have any update?
I think to provide a bit of clarity, it's the pilot that was hit. It has the rank of a major, and the co-pilot, in fact, is safe. He managed to fly the helicopter safely back to Goma. We haven't had any update on the major. We do understand that he is critical. That's the pilot. And of course, we don't know yet whether the families of the deceased has been informed formally.
Yeah. Hence our caution in releasing the names. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of background to the SANDF's involvement in the DRC. Am I correct that it's under the auspices of a United Nations peacekeeping group?
That's correct. There was a United Nations resolution some years ago where it was resolved that a certain number of nations, including South Africa, was going to take place or going to take part in a peace keeping role in the DRC, especially in the east, where there were political upheaval and military activities against the government of the DRC. The whole idea behind the mission is to stabilize the DRC and to keep the peace and to protect humanitarian interests and actions. Now, of course, this is not the first time that the M23 rebels have fired on or engaged in hostilities with the peacekeeping force of the UN. And so their mandate is rather limited to just defending themselves whenever under attack. What is a bit worrying, of course, is that especially in the last couple of months, the M23 movement has seemed to have reorganized. They seem to have been rearmed. Many reports say that they are more organized than they were ever before. And if you look at the location where this helicopter came under fire, it's quite close to Goma. And some experts are saying that it's an indication, a worrying indication, that the M23 rebels are creeping closer and closer to Goma, where the UN's headquarters is basically established. So it's a worrisome trend that we see here, and that the peacekeepers are being attacked. This is going to, I'm afraid, this might be the beginning of a new wave of confrontation in the history of this affair.
And it's been quite a few years. My understanding, if I'm correct, I think around 2015, South African troops went up to that area. Recently, President Felix Tshisekedi accused the rebels of backing down from an agreed peace deal that they'd apparently, M23 rebels had agreed to pull out of certain towns, and he said that they hadn't stuck to that. So you do believe that this could be the beginning of an escalation?
I think so, and I say so because in 2012 already, those parties, M23 and the DRC government, reached an agreement. Now, part of that agreement was, as I understand it, that the M23 would disarm, integrate into the DRC's defense force, and be recognized as a political party. Now, none of that integration, disarmament, or a recognition as a political party has taken place. So, there's recriminations from both parties flying all over the show. And certainly it doesn't bode well for a peaceful future. One would rather think that if the mission of the UN was premised on the fact that there's this agreement between the parties, but this agreement is not enforced, then, some people are suggesting that maybe one should rethink the role of peacekeeping and rather go over into peace enforcement or some other more forceful method of dealing with the parties. The only other alternative, which of course is the one that one should always try and choose, is a negotiated settlement. The parties must come together. The UN must do way more than just try and keep the peace.
How many South African troops are part of the UN peacekeeping mission there? And as a defence union representative, does your union have concerns about the ongoing presence of our troops in that region?
No, not at all. The fact of the matter is, soldiers serve this country and it serves the state. And if they get the valid order to deploy somewhere, then they go and deploy there. That is what soldiering is about. And we believe, as a union, we believe that it is a good mission to be on. It is in the interest of the African continent that some stabilization is effected in that region. And I think South Africa should be quite proud of the part that we are playing in that. To answer your other question, there's just over 1,000 or so South African soldiers deployed there at any time in the DRC. We're not concerned about the fact that they're deployed. We understand that that's part of soldiering, and we support them 100%.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Much appreciated. That, of course, is Pikkie Greeff, Advocate Pikkie Greeff. He is National Secretary of the Defence Force Union, SANDU, just telling us about that tragic incident over the weekend. Peacekeeping helicopter came under fire, suspected by M23 rebels, and a South African flight engineer unfortunately died. And our understanding is the pilot also came under fire, and we hear he's in a critical condition in hospital.